Hello friends and welcome to our channel Astrologia, where we share the divine knowledge of Vedic Jyotish. I Manjushri welcome you all to our channel Astrologia. Friends, today we shall discuss another very important and interesting topic of Vedic Jyotish, which will help us in deciphering the chart more accurately. Today we will discuss the concept of Bhavat Bhavam, which is of utmost importance in Vedic Jyotish. The concept of Bhavat Bhavam helps us in understanding the house-to-house relationship of the birth chart. Bhavat Bhavam helps us in understanding a house in a better way and also its correlation with other house. Friends, by now we all know that there are 12 houses in a horoscope. For Bhavat Bhavam, we count the same number of houses from a specific house. Let us understand Bhavat Bhavam concept or house to house count. The first house of any chart is the starting point from where we start reading a horoscope, and that is why it is called the Lagna or ascendant. The first house is first house itself, and it is the Bhavat Bhavam of the first house. Likewise, the second house from the second house will be the third house of the chart. The third house from the third house is the fifth house of the chart. The fourth house from the fourth house is the seventh house of the chart. The fifth house from the fifth house is the ninth house. The sixth house from the sixth house is the 11th house of the chart. The seventh house from the seventh house is the first house, that is the Lagna or ascendant of the chart. The eighth house from the eighth house is the third house. The ninth house from the ninth house is the fifth house of the chart. The 10th house from the 10th house is the seventh house of the chart. The 11th house from the 11th house is the ninth house of the chart. The 12th house from the 12th house is the 11th house of the chart. Friends, let us understand Bhavat Bhavam through some examples. Suppose we examine the Bhavat Bhavam of the fourth house. The fourth house from the fourth house is the seventh house of the chart. The fourth house represents happiness, motherly care, comfort, vehicles, home, etc. The seventh house, which is 4 houses away from the fourth house, is the Bhavat Bhavam of the fourth house. If the fourth house signifies home, comfort and small vehicles, etc., then the seventh house would represent your holiday homes, big vehicles with more comforts and luxury, etc. All that the fourth house can give, the seventh house can also give, as seventh house is the higher version or higher self of the fourth house. Let's take another example. The 11th house from the 11th house is the ninth house of the chart. When we count 11 houses from the 11th house, we come to the ninth house of the chart. The ninth house is the Bhavat Bhavam of the 11th house. The 11th house of the horoscope represents your hopes, wishes, desires, gains, friends, network circles, society, large organizations, etc. The ninth house, being the higher self of the 11th house, gives us the clue about your true friends, true desires, true gains, etc. So when we check the desires, friends, gains, etc. for the chart in question, we should also check the 9th house, which is the Bhavat Bhavam of the 11th house, which will give us a clearer picture. Friends, let us take another example. The 5th house is the Bhavat Bhavam of the 3rd house, which means the 3rd house from the 3rd house is the 5th house. The 3rd house signifies your courage, comfort, skills, short distance travel, online, media, speech, gossip, etc. The Bhavat Bhavam of the 3rd house, which is the 5th house. The 5th house is 3 houses away from the 3rd house and is the higher version of the 3rd house. This shows that the 5th house is the higher version of the 3rd house, which signifies theatre, cinema, orator, public speaking, novel writing, etc. Friends, let us take another example. The 9th house from the 9th house is the 5th house of the chart. The 9th house represents your father, teacher, gurus, advisors, long distance travel, luck, fortune, bhagya, pilgrimage, religion, etc. Now, in this example, the 5th house is the higher octave or higher self of the 9th house. If the 9th house is your father, then the 5th house is your father's father, which is your grandfather. Hence, the 5th house is a very important house of any chart. Friends, taking another example, the 1st house is the Bhavat Bhavam of the 7th house. The 7th house of the chart represents marriage, relationships, career, business, etc. If we take the 7th house as the center point or the focal point and start counting from the 7th house, then 7 houses away we come to the 1st house of the chart. The Bhavat Bhavam of the 7th house is the 1st house. The 1st house becomes the higher octave or higher self of the 7th house. Therefore, the 1st house is the Bhavat Bhavam of the 7th house, which justifies the concept of looking at the 1st house and the 7th house while deciphering a chart for relationships, marriage, career, etc. We also have to look at the 1st house when we evaluate marriage, relationship, career, etc. for the native. Let's take another example. The 5th house from the 5th house is the 9th house of the chart. The 5th house represents education, intelligence, children, purva punya, past life deeds, etc. The 5th house from the 5th house of the chart is the 9th house. 5 houses counted from the 5th house, we arrive at the 9th house of the chart. Therefore, the 9th house is the Bhavat Bhavam of the 5th house. All that the 5th house can give, the 9th house can also give. If the 5th house gives us education like graduation, intelligence, children, etc., the 9th house being the higher version or higher self of the 5th house can give higher education like post-graduation, PhD degrees, super intelligence, grandchildren, etc. So one house can give so much information about the native. Therefore, Bhavat Bhavam means the same number of houses counted from a particular specific house. So friends, today we learnt about the concept of Bhavat Bhavam in astrology. In our forthcoming videos, we shall discuss another interesting topic of astrology. Friends, if you like this video, please hit the like button and share your comments. Friends, if you want us to make a video on a particular specific topic of astrology, you may mention it in the comment section. Do subscribe to our channel for more updates and press the bell icon to be the first to see our videos as soon as they are posted. This is Manjushree signing off. Thank you for watching.